I have had a haircut. Look, my hair is shorter. Oh yes, I love it because it's windy at the minute, and when the wind blew it was all like wee, and it was embarrassing. Anyway, that's not what the video is about. Hey Spuds, it's Jamie. Welcome back to another video on the channel. I don't know, I nearly fumbled that up really badly, and today I'm very excitable. No idea why. I do not know. It's very late. I should be very sleepy and tired, but I'm not. Today we are looking at anti-LGBT plus ads. These are the kinds of things people put money, they put effort, and they put their time, but not their creativity. Maybe they would be better if they did that. But they put all this effort and money and stuff into these adverts just to be homophobic or transphobic. And it's very bizarre. It's like, hey, what have you got against this group of people that do not impact your life whatsoever, but you're just pretending that they do? And so you go into all these lengths to just be a bit shitty. Anyway, we're going to be looking at some of those today. I hope you're ready. I hope it's not going to be too sad. It shouldn't be, because we're reacting to them. Anyway, before I waffle and just sound even more silly, let's get on with it, shall we?
America's been drinking beer from a company that doesn't even know which restroom to use.
What a bizarre way to start. America's been drinking beer from a company that doesn't even know which restroom to use. And I'm basing this on the fact that they sponsored a trans woman. This is the whole Bud Light Dylan Mulvaney thing. They made an advert, like people made an advert, like an anti do not drink this beer advert. Is it an advert for something? I don't know where this is gonna go, but I would like to very strongly disagree with that opening statement, and also the fact that people like to then say that trans people don't know what bathroom to use. It is very much the transphobes who are confused about which bathroom people should be using, as in trans people. The trans people and trans allies are very, very aware of the bathrooms that should be being used.
That's why I created Conservative Dad's ultra-right, 100% woke-free beer.
Oh, this is a parody. This must be a parody. Can we just rewatch that description? That's why I created Conservative Dad's ultra-right wing 100% woke-free beer. Woke-free beer.
As conservatives, we're constantly getting hit in the face, left and right, by the woke mind virus. But the last place we want it is in our beer. If you know which bathroom to use, you know what beer you should be drinking. Stop giving money to woke corporations that hate our values.
Did you buy that can? Wondering if you gave money to that woke corporation that does not like your opinions. I'm very much struggling to see this as anything but a parody. I can't tell.
And to the rest of you woke corporations, stay the away from our kids.
Buy yours online in 42 states at...
Tastes like freedom.
Tastes like bigotry. I just had a little Google, right? Please do not go on the website. I've blocked some of it off so that it does not tempt people to go and find it, and it does not promote them. It seems to be real. It actually seems to be a genuine thing. Like somebody actually did that for real. That's a little bit baffling. They dislike the fact that a beer company sponsored a trans woman, sent a trans woman a can with her face on. They dislike that so much that this is what's happening. Tastes like freedom. Oh God. Do people feel like they're doing something productive by being transphobic? Also, I read something really good recently about the whole woke thing, and it's kind of being used as a negative, and I'm like, mate, I think if you're not woke nowadays, that's a negative. Like, being anti-woke is just being like anti-progressive, and it's about just wanting to stay in your very close-minded view of the world and not accept people who are different to you. And I don't see that as a good thing. Is this fair? Let's have a look. So it looks like some athletes who I'm presuming are women athletes based on the fact that I know what this advert is for. And then we pan over a bit, and that's a bit really badly like Photoshop. What? How did they come about with that clothing on the runner who I'm guessing is supposed to be a man? So, oppose the Equality Act, women's sports for women only. Paid for by Women's Liberation Radio News. Thanks for spending your money on that. I find this really interesting. It's this whole thing of like, keep trans women out of women's sports. Keep women's sports for women. And it's like trans women are women. That's, hence the word women in the name. And also, recent study has shown that they have have no advantage over cisgender women in elite sports. Ta-da. There are things in place to keep elite sports as fair as possible for all people competing and certain things that are checked for. The way it's going with people wanting to try so hard to exclude trans women, it is actually starting to harm cis women as well now. So it's just really all round a very bad take and a very bad thing to be doing to try and push trans women out. And we're not even talking about elite sports all the time. We're not even talking about Olympic level or national level. We're also talking about like literal just kids at school wanting to play football or whatever with their friends, not being allowed to because they're trans. How shitty. I really don't understand this take. It deliberately depicts people that you would presume are men and presenting as men and living as men, competing against women. That's not who trans women are. And a trans woman who's pre-transition would not be competing in the women's category. So it's this whole thing of trying to, one is like misgendering and just transphobic and rude to trans women, and then just like flat out lying. That's why whenever you don't even need to scratch the surface, you just need to look at the surface of a transphobic argument and be like, oh yes, there are the blatant lies. Wonderful. Why do I feel like half the adverts today are going to be about this? Vote Justice Daniel Kelly on April 4th. I don't know what year, I don't know how old this is. Preserve your parental rights. Tick. Save your children from
trans indoctrination.
Oh, the horror, the trans indoctrination. Yeah, what? This whole like indoctrination thing, when we think about what constitutes as indoctrination, trans topics and being trans is definitely nowhere near on even coming close to being on a list of things that actually people are indoctrinated with. But I can think of several things that I've seen a lot of people who have transphobic views actually doing indoctrination of other things. Let's not get into it in too much detail today. But the hypocrisy is so strong. If a child indicates that they are trans, if they are fortunate enough to have a family that accepts and listens to them, literally they're then just allowed to socially wear what they want to wear and be comfortable, and it in no way impacts them. And if it's not something that persists for their whole life, literally no harm. They were a kid that was allowed to express themselves. Who gives a shit? But so often kids are not believed. It's a child-led thing. I think this is why people with certain political and certain worldviews have such difficulty with it. It's because trans kids coming out as trans and expressing that they are trans, that's very much a child-led thing that happens. It is the child coming forward and saying, this is how I feel. You can't look at somebody and know that they are trans. Nobody's looking at a kid who's slightly non-conforming with their assigned birth sex and going, trans. I'm going to trans you right now. That's not what's happening. And being exposed to trans people and seeing trans representation does not make people trans. Just like seeing and learning about LGBT plus people in general does not make people LGBT plus. That's not how it works. It's something you are born as or you are not, and you cannot make yourself be and you cannot make yourself not be, if that makes sense. Lots of people with this kind of opinion very much struggle with the idea that a child can have independent thoughts and feelings that a parent then listens to and allows their child to explore. Gonna leave it at that. Born black, yes, people are born that race. Not born this way. I've never seen somebody born with rainbow face paint. No, never seen that happen. Homosexuality is a behaviour. Oh, they're not talking about face paint. I see, they're talking about being gay. Okay, homosexuality is a behaviour, not a civil right. Have they not heard Lady Gaga's hit single Born This Way? I find the comparison interesting. Why is this an advert that exists nowadays? Why? Why are people literally paying to have some billboard, I don't know, that looks electronic advertisement on the side of a highway, is that what it's called in America? It'd be a motorway here, to say that you're not born gay, people. It's just a behaviour that you have. I feel like some people need to just open a textbook that is beyond basic biology and also just listen to people and people's experiences and accept that people are different. What is this? Australian Christian Lobby, sponsored, paid for by Australian Christian Lobby. Launceston Library is holding a drag queen story time for 2 to 5 year olds Wednesday 15th February. This is an attempt to sexualise innocent toddlers and encourage gender dysphoria. It must be stopped. Protect innocence. Stop drag queen story time at Launceston Library. So I googled this drag queen story time at the Tasmanian libraries in Tasmania, and see this Australian Christian Lobby thing calling for it to be cancelled and it's not good, cancel it, blah blah blah, boycott. They refer to the drag queen as Pussy Poppins. And I googled this, and on the actual drag storytime website of Libraries of Tasmania, she's called Miss Poppins. And the only place that she's referred to as Pussy Poppins in reference to this drag queen storytime for kids is in the this is bad, this should not happen, we hate this, drag queens are inappropriate. So I feel like that was a deliberate misuse of her name. She may have two drag names for different contexts, but clearly for the context of doing a drag queen storytime for children, she goes by Miss Poppins. As far as I can see, that's what it's advertised as on the actual website. So that's what I'm going to take as the correct information. So not only have they created this advert that's like,
Stop children being read storybooks. No to the storybooks. Rah!
they've also misrepresented what it is. And interesting choice. Thank you very much. What a lovely advert. Women's sport is not for men. Okay. What is this trying to achieve? What is this trying to do? There is also somebody saying that's transphobic, which, I mean, clearly the message of this is likely transphobic. Like, women's sport is not for men. It's gonna have the angle of like, no trans women in women's sports, right? Well, it is transphobic because then you're referring to trans women as men and also rejecting them from a group that they are quite clearly part of and should be included in. Reading that as a trans person, someone who supports trans people competing in the correct gender category of sport, so like trans women competing with women, yes, women's sport is not for men, as in not for trans men like me and not for cis men, not for people who are men. Very accurate. It was trying to be transphobic, it was trying to say a thing, but by being so bigoted, it said the opposite, almost. They took misgendering so hard that they just flew straight past their point. Celebrate diversity. Oh, okay. It seems like there was like a pride thing, saying proudly presenting the rainbow stage, and somebody has put a sticker on this saying celebrate diversity by silencing women on a rainbow flag. I don't know how a push for trans rights and more trans inclusion and increased trans representation has suddenly led to this cry of women are being silenced by trans advocates and trans activists. I don't get it. Because actually what we're seeing is transphobic voices being uplifted more. Have you seen the books that have been written? Have you seen the documentaries that have been made? Who's the primary voice on those documentaries? Who gets the primary voice in daytime talk shows? It's the transphobes. It's the trans people that have to go and always be pitted against somebody else and never just have independent speaking time, or very rarely just be able to appear and talk about their experiences without it being posed to some kind of debate. So I find it really interesting that TERFs will cry out about being silenced whilst promoting their book on the radio. Like, wow, how silenced you are.
She trains at 6 a.m. every morning. She spent years working to shave off seconds. She's the captain of her school's team. He's just a mid-pack finisher. But not today. Unfortunately, this competition was over before it even began. Woke left-wing politicians are destroying girls' sports. Tell Biden and his radical allies, no men in girls' sports.
Stop the insanity. I also like how they've no men in girls' sports. I always find it really weird when people refer to women as girls, but like men as men. It's either no men in women's sports or no boys in girls' sports if you're talking about children's sports. And it's just that she's worked really hard to shave seconds off her time. She's done this. He is a mid-pack finisher. They're literally paying to make adverts and spending time making adverts that are just peddling lies. I bet you it's just one arsehole one time was like, oh yeah, I bet you that all these trans women competing were actually just men who were bored of being mediocre sportsmen, so they decided to compete against women to win. Ha ha ha. Just belittling the fact and saying that any man could just walk in and beat elite women athletes. But also that trope has just gained a life of its own, and it's now suddenly become this thing that's like people are making adverts on, and it's a big thing that's being pushed, and it's like, oh well, clearly the only reason that trans women athletes exist is because they are men who failed in the men's category, so they wanted to go into the women's category. Because yes, anybody would choose to go through the process of transitioning, which is really difficult, really lengthy, for most people expensive. They face the discrimination and face the lack of rights and legal protections that trans people face in many parts of the world, and discrimination just everywhere, just to win at sport. Look at the hate towards trans women in sport. sport. Yes, clearly people would choose to face that level of hate and harassment and bigotry. It's just ridiculous. I'm convinced if people just sat down and used an ounce of common sense for a minute and just had a think about the actual logic of it, they would see how ludicrous it is. Because I think it's so ludicrous, I cannot see how people think this is logical and accurate and a fair thing to be saying. Like, obviously, trans people agree. Anybody would agree that actual men should not be competing in women's sports. That's not what's happening. That is not a trans issue to be discussing. It's a non-issue because it doesn't happen. If that is an opinion you hold it, but it does not have anything to do with trans people. And actually, by forcing trans women out of women's sports, you are forcing trans men into them. We've seen it happening. There was, I think, a high school or college level wrestler who was a trans man forced to compete against the women. And everybody didn't like it. They're like, oh, this man is beating the women. I was like, yeah, he's a trans man on testosterone at a similar level and competing on a similar level and doing a similar amount of work into this. He's beating the women, but he's being forced to do that. This is literally a problem that transphobes caused, and they're still complaining about it. They're the ones pushing men into women's sports, aren't they? And then taking a leaf out of OT's book, we're going to end on a little positive one of a billboard that says, God loves gays. Yay, and a rainbow. Love it. Isn't that wonderful? This is the kind of advert we want to see, and it's very true because the sun always shines for pride, pretty much. I mean, that's not the only evidence. Personally, do not believe in a god, but if there were one, I could not see the reason to hate gay people. So yes, we're ending on a happy advert. And that is all the anti-LGBT plus adverts for today, with a sneaky little happy one right at the end there. Let me know what you think. Let me know how ridiculous these are. I don't know, just go comment down below. I don't know why people would bother going out of their way to be so hateful against people that literally do not impact their lives. It baffles me no end. And reacting to these, I honestly struggle to not just think that every single one is a parody and a joke. I don't understand how people could seriously say these things and believe these things. Anyway, clearly a lot of lies have been bought into. That's it for the video. If you liked it, think about giving a thumbs up and subscribing, but no pressure. And yeah, as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Much love. Bye.